welcome back to Master Guitar, where we will learn how to master the guitar. Or today it's Synth Saturday, or it could be on 2600 Tuesday. I don't know which playlist to put this on. So the question today, this was posed by one of my viewers. He is debating whether or not to buy a 2600 or an Odyssey. I'll give you the shorthand answer first, and I think I explained it, hopefully in not too wordy a section when I was in the comments, is that many players are referring to the Odyssey as the immediacy of the Odyssey. Now what they mean by that is that you can very quickly get your sound settings set up in the Odyssey, whereas with the 2600 it can take a little bit more work. Not that much though, because I'm going to show you setting up some sound patches on the 2600 and then some sound patches on the Odyssey. Alright, so let's go over the strengths and weaknesses of the Odyssey versus the 2600. Okay, that's the 2600 that you're hearing right there. That's a D. Let me get this thing in tune really quick. So, hoping I can get this video under an hour. The first attempt was right about an hour. So, just be warned, this video could take quite a while to get through. That's a D. That's a D. That's a little above a D. Okay, so I'm actually going to leave that in because I want to show you how long it takes to tune the 2600. To tune the Odyssey, let's go over the Odyssey first. Here's my Odyssey. So I got to take VCO 1. That's a little high. So, now the great thing about it is I can hit hold and it will continue to drone. So as you can see, tuning this can take, 30-45 seconds. Now let's explain the setup of the 2600 and then we'll talk about how it's different from the Odyssey. Obviously I'm not going to get into the whole deep dive on the synth. That could take, with the 2600, a deep dive could take 2 hours. On an Odyssey it could take easily an hour. So to contrast the two, we could be talking a 3-hour video, and no one's going to watch a 3-hour video. You might bookmark it, watch 10 minutes, and then come back, watch another 7 minutes, and then 3 months later you get reminded, oh yeah, I bookmarked this, and then you'll try it and be, oh well, So anyway, so with the Odyssey, the 2600, you have one regular oscillator here. You have two choices for your sounds, which are the square wave and the saw wave. This is essentially what you get with the Odyssey, is you get two of these oscillators. Now the original 2600 had two of these oscillators and then this one extended oscillator which has triangle wave, saw wave, sine wave, and square wave. They've got it marked here as pulse, but essentially it's a square wave. And there's ways to take your LFO and you can patch your sine wave into here, and then you can take your LFO and plug it in over here into this one, and you can turn the volume up and get all the changes. There's ways to make your pulse width modulate automatically. You can do it in the Odyssey and in the 2600. I know how to do it on the 2600. I've never done it on the Odyssey because I find with the Odyssey I just want to get in there and start playing music right away because it's a little bit more limited, and the limits in this case is not a weakness, it's actually its strength. So with the 2600, as you can see, 3 oscillators, large VCF, VCA section. This is basically your VCA right here, and what it is you know, voltage controlled frequency. This is your master voltage controlled amplifier. Now when you're doing this, you're also pumping your volume levels right through the filter so you can modulate it, and then over here into your VCA. And then down here, of course, you've got your ring mod, your LFO, so we can turn my ring mod all the way off. So you're hearing all three oscillators there. There's Odyssey, there's 1, 2, 3. Turn off my ring mod there. And this is something to understand with this. Think of this section here as being like a tone control, so you can got it? So your keyboard CV here, your ADSR, and then over here you've got your VCO2. So you can see just how, you know, sitting here and playing with these three, the keyboard CV, the ADSR, and the VCO2, I'm actually getting different sounds out of my 2600. This thing is ready to go. It's got hardwired settings, so it's kind of a semi-modular. An actual modular, you would have to patch everything together. The only thing I leave here constantly plugged in is I've got my AR output plugged into the gate input on my ADSR. This way I've got right away I'm not having to mess with my filters too much to be able to play it. So, and it has benefits that way. It's purposely designed this way. Just experiment with that. So just like you would experiment with your ADSR, you'll want to experiment with that on here. Okay, so now let's talk about the Odyssey. Odyssey, same thing. Now there's some things that the Odyssey has, the Behringer Odyssey has, that the 2600 doesn't have. For instance, the first thing, of course, is the Clark Technics effects. Right now I've got it set for chorus sound. And then this is one oscillator, this is another oscillator. It's kind of set up a little bit different. And then you've got this section where you can choose between, you know, this is your sample and hold mixer, which has a different purpose. I'm not going to get into that at all today. And then over here you've got your filter section. This is your envelope, and your filter section, kind of like on the 2600, is also combined with the VCA. So that way you've got VCA and VCF all together. Now, just like with this, where you have your tuning, and then you've got your choice between saw wave or pulse wave, you've got the same thing over here in this one. So you've got saw wave, pulse wave, or square wave. So I got that set for saw wave, so let's go to square wave. And now completely to square wave, because what it is this one's on VCO1 is on square, VCO2 is on saw. So let's change that all to just square. Yeah, you get the idea. And I can take out my noise completely. Now remember, you do have on here, you have the sync, just like over here on the extended controls, you have the sync control for these two or for these two. So I can set this on sync and get those weird funky sync settings. Even though these are the basic regular VCOs that the 2600 has, they did include the sync settings on both of these. So I can use LFO. You know, I can set this one to be low frequency, or I can set this one to be on sync. So that's just something to keep in mind. So like if you wanted to set my sync, the only problem with doing that is once I do that, now I got to get the thing tuned again. So let me set this here, and that's not a D. That's a C. That's an E. D sharp, almost fully a D. There we go, and we're in tune again. So just something to keep in mind, you're gonna have to play with the tuning like that. All right, so I got this thing set up now, so I'm showing the Odyssey. Anything resembling a deep dive is going to take a long time. We're not really doing a deep dive, even though this one's probably going to take somewhere about an hour. So just like with how I was showing you how in my VCF I had the keyboard CV, the ADSR, and VCO2. So I got the same thing here, except it's ADSR, keyboard CV, my SNH, sample and hold LFO control, and my high pass, the ADSR control. Alright, not playing any more of that because I don't want a copyright strike. So some of you will recognize what I was just playing. See how in many ways I'm able to very quickly get into sounds just by manipulating a couple of controls. Now, one of the things that the Odyssey is kind of set up for that the 2600 is not, is the Odyssey is set up right away for duophonic. If you decide you want this monophonic and not duophonic, there's two chords in the back, there's two spots in the back, you just plug a chord in there. It's even in the instruction booklet how to do it. You just take a 1/4-inch phono plug. You plug it in one and then into the other. I think on this one it's not a 1/4-inch. I think it's the 1/8 inch, just like the standard Eurorack plugs. I have one in there in one side, but it's not plugged into the other because I like the duophonic. Many people prefer this for a bass instrument, and so they actually don't want they kind of don't want that. So they would rather have the monophonic instead of duophonic. I like the duophonic. So it's up to you. Now see how I've kind of got it just by sitting it in a square wave and playing with my VCF frequency, and then with the 3 controls, the keyboard CV, the sample and hold / LFO, and the ADSR control. I've actually created almost kind of a organ sound. Another thing that the Odyssey has, the 2600 does not, is not only does it have that section there, it's got the sequencer here and distortion. I usually leave the distortion off. Okay, all the playing stuff aside, how do we set up a sound patch on the 2600? How long does it take? Well, to know that, you got to understand your defaults. Oh, sometimes I hate my tripod. I need to replace my tripods. That's bottom line. They're broken. I was able to fix it so I could instantly get it usable, and I showed that. I don't think I showed that in a video, but that's something I did very quickly, just because I want to be able to get this thing up and running and use it. Let's just take 3 chords and let me explain the default sound settings. Okay, this standard one is set up to automatically be in saw wave on your standard VCO. These 2 are set up to be in pulse wave. So if I wanted to get this to be fully saw wave, here's how fast you go. You have to take this saw wave, and saw wave and put it in VCO 1, 2, and 3. So let's get this sound patch going and time me and see how long it takes. 1, 2, 2, 3. Ready to go. How long did that take? In just case you're wondering, I'm triggering this thing with my Arturia key step. So, and of course it does have the, I can of course put this thing into, I've got an octave transpose on it. And I can arpeggiate it. It's pretty easy. You just hit the play button and hold 3 chords down. It's like cheating almost. But anyway. So that's how fast it goes to switch the chord patch. So let's say I just want to go back to having this thing all on pulse wave. Well, it's really easy. I can do this. Pulse wave. Wasn't that fast? So, if you're not trying to get experimental with this thing, you can change your sound settings very quickly. And just by understanding these are kind of your tone controls, and then go for my ring mods up, put my ring mod up on this channel. See how fast I got the ring mod going in there? I don't have to plug anything. It's already set up. Down, ring mod's out, and my ring mod is out. So what do all these do? These are basically droppers. So if I lift this up, it raises the note and drops it. I'm just trying to explain it the simplest way to understand. So if you don't need it, don't play with it. So let's take that one again. We got it down an octave now, so let's try it in A. Do you think you can use that sound? I think that's pretty usable, and it doesn't take a whole lot to get that. So patching this thing does not take as long as you think, but you would definitely want to have a flip book of common patch settings. Maybe get there's a Behringer version of the 2600 patch book. There's also an Odyssey patch book in case you want to try different common sound settings. It does not take all that long. Once you understand the concept of 2600 based instruments, of which the Odyssey is one, you understand about using your VCF filter up here and then using these three controls almost as if they're a tone control, and that is a lot of the battle. And then just choosing different sounds, like say I wanted to have pure triangle, but I don't want to hear the pulse wave. So here it is. Watch, ready? Triangle, triangle. And this can be while your singer is saying, hey, how's everybody doing tonight? Everybody having a good time? Yeah, alright. This is a song called Square Wave, or Triangle Wave. So there I'm on triangle wave. Remember, triangle wave, to be heard, it tends to be very low frequency, so you'll need to bring your VCA control up. This one right there, sorry. You need to bring that up so you can be heard. Or you can increase your filter, so let's bring this thing back down. So there you go, you're in square wave now, and I basically just turned down the volume on oscillator 1 so you're not hearing the pulse wave. And I got just a little bit of square wave in there, and that can help with your volume. So how long did that take to set up? It really doesn't take as long as you think. You just kind of have to know your synth. And how to do certain sound effects. Like if I set my VCF control up just a little bit, it'll drone on a note, but then this really is where it gets good, is when you take your sample and hold and you want to plug that into something. So I take my sample and hold out, which is right here, plug that in the VCO2, and then you just need to add a little noise, pink noise, max. And then we need to make sure our noise is up. And there you go. Take my ring mod out. And let's take some of my noise settings, bring that down. but you need to have wow, that's loud. So you can see that getting these weird and fancy sound settings really doesn't take a whole lot of time. All right. So as far as the differences, do you need the triangle wave? The pulse wave you already come with, the saw wave you already come with. You got saw and pulse, saw and square, saw and square, saw and square. Do you need the sine wave? Will you use the triangle wave? Are you going to use sample and hold? Excuse me. Are you going to use triangle wave? Are you going to use your sine wave? If you're going to use sine or triangle, you need the 2600. If you want to get to your sample and hold sound quickly, you need the 2600. You can do the sample and hold in the Odyssey. I've done it a few times, but it's a little bit more fiddly. It takes a little bit longer to get there, and you basically have to memorize your steps to get there, or have a patch set up so you're automatically flipping to that page in the book and going there. That's about it. And of course, noise generator, don't need that. Now I've got this thing set up for a lead tone. So that's just square wave. Now if I just want saw wave, there we go. Now everyone keeps telling me that that's a saw wave, but it sounds more like a square wave to me, but whatever. Alright, so we'll plug that in, see if that really makes a difference. There, I don't know if you recognize Swan Lake, but there you go. I just blasted out some classical music for you. So it's not that much if you need the 2600 or the Odyssey. Which one to get? It's a matter of personal taste. Here's some things I like to give you. Are you just looking for some good sounds you can get to very quickly? If that's the case, it's probably going to be your Odyssey. Do you need sample and hold? If you need sample and hold and need it quickly, then probably the 2600. If you like to experiment a lot, the 2600 is probably your synth. However, this is kind of why they came up with the Odyssey. Remember when the 2600 came out, it was $2,600. The Odyssey cost a little bit less. I think it was about $1,200. So it's about a difference in price of $1,400. And this was in the 70s. So people were paying, just for a reference, my parents bought a couple of Toyota cars, and I think they were $29.95. So this thing cost almost as much as a car. So keep in mind that when people were asking for this, they were asking not for something faster to play or faster to get sound patches. What they wanted was something they could afford, because this was very expensive and also very hard to find. I think the statistics I read is that of the 2600s, they only made, what, 340? I'm not sure of which one, whether it was the the original black, or whether it was the blue Meanie, or the gray Marvin, or is it gray Meanie and it's gray Meanie and blue Marvin, and of course the Christmas tree. So the Christmas tree one, of course, is now called the Christmas tree because of Behringer, not so much because of what they called it with the ARP. The original ARP was actually not a brown, but it's supposed to be an orange. I was a little disappointed when I got this one, and I guess they changed the ink coloring on this from orange to a brown. I prefer the orange, so it was kind of a disappointment to me, but not that much. I mean, it still looks good. And as I mentioned in my 2600 video, Behringer saw that some guy had gotten his 2600, I guess, refabbed send it in to be worked on. And when he did it, he decided he was going to take all of his knobs, drilled in the holes, put in the LEDs. So this is basically somebody on the KVR forum did this to his 2600. Or actually, maybe, I think it was his Odyssey he did it to. And then Behringer said, well, that looks cool. So they did the Christmas tree coloring originally for the Odyssey, and then they did it to the 2600. So that's neither here nor there. And as far as the settings between the 4072 and the 4012 processor, you could leave it on either one. I just leave it on the 4072 just because, and it's not like with the Odyssey where each of the different filters actually has a different sound. There's almost no difference in sound between the 4012 and the 4072. I leave it on the 4072 because if when I first wanted the 2600, when I first heard it and wanted it and said as a musician, yes, I want to have one, the one with the 4072 filter would have been the one I bought. So that's why I leave it that way. And again, just quickly understanding how to get your sounds in this thing, you take that, plug it into your filter down here, your VCF, and then same thing, triangle or saw or the sine or the square wave, and just plug it in to here. If you're not going to patch a lot, the 2600 is probably your better bet. If you start patching a lot, if you start saying, wow, I've got 96 patch points on this thing, what am I going to do with this? And you start playing with it a lot, and I've fallen into that trap very quickly. The 2600 is prone to experimentation. You want to start experimenting a lot with it because you get all these chords. You're like, well, let me get a few more chords because they're relatively cheap. You can go right out to Guitar Center, walk in their keyboard section, buy a whole bunch of patch chords, and this becomes, let's plug it in here and see what this does. And then once you learn about your mult down here, where you can take this and plug it in there, and then take your sound setting here, and you can plug it in somewhere else and say, okay, what does this do? Like if I plug it in here, what does that do? Or maybe I want to take my mult out here and I want to plug that into, say, my ring mod, which I can do. So I'll plug that into my ring mod right there. What's that going to do? Yeah, I'll go over here and play with my ring mod, bring that up. And right here, what does that do? And once you start playing with this stuff, you find out how, it gets very addicting. You want to do it a lot. If you just want to get this thing set up with 3 saw waves, because that sounds massive and cool, really easy to do, really fun to do. There we go. Saw wave, saw wave, saw wave. And just take out my ring mods and oh, sorry, my sleeve was in the way, so I was just sitting here playing with these parts. Take out the ring mod. Okay, one of my oscillators just went out of tune, so let's see which one it is. First one. Now see how very quickly things go wrong with the 2600, and you got to quickly kind of fix it. Good, good, good. Do you really hear a lot of difference between the 12 and the 4072? I can't tell the difference, and I've played with this thing a lot. I've gotten very used to. Okay, so looking over here, this is my, and to get this thing to square waves, okay, I got it on square waves. So don't think of I'm tired of holding my stand up. I gotta extend my tripod legs. There you go. Again, don't think of this as being more limited. Think of it as it's cut down, but the usage of it, the intention wasn't to cut it down and make it quicker to program. The idea was to cut it down and make it cheaper so that people could afford it. So remember, this is half the price of a car. So if you're thinking in terms of what's a car, $1,500 now, so this would be like a $7,500 synth. Remember, we use these like tone controls. How hard is it to see here now? And again, you can program all of that into your sequencer and just let that rip. Have your distortion on or off. You've got your sound settings over here, and if I don't want the effects section, I can just turn it off, and there you go. Now, just an explanation, just so you know, you'll notice I almost never fiddle with my ADSR because I like a certain amount of sweep into the tone. I like it to, put the attack up so that way it fades into the note. And then I like to have an immediate amount of sweep on it. So it's up and down. Because it sounds like a synth. And then I like to have a certain amount of portamento on it. So it's sliding up and down because I don't want this to be confused with an organ. I want it to sound like a synth. And that's not how it was used back in the day. People did it this way just because they were trying to have a sound source, and sometimes they wanted it to sound like an organ. So they would just, the easiest way to do it, put your release all the way down, your attack all the way down, and your decay and sustain all the way up, and you get more of an organ-like tone. When I got my Korg Delta back in the day, that was my first synth. That's how you did it, that's how I did it, because I just wanted that kind of a organ-like sound. And the Delta was actually set up to kind of be a portable organ and a string section, and then also a little bit of a mono synth. But because they had the organ set up for polyphony, or polyphony, you basically had a polyphonic synth with one oscillator. So. So last couple of things about it, just in case. There is no octave switches on the 2600. There's an octave switch here because I guess that was one of the commonly requested features, or maybe it was something that ARP did back in the day. So like, hey, we figured out how to do this. It's too late to put it on the 2600 because it's already out there, but now we got. So it's a 2-octave jump. So there you go. those are the differences between. I think I find myself personally, as much as I know the 2600 and as much as I love it and use it, I tend to go very quickly towards my Odyssey first. So that's my analysis. Now you'll have to decide on this based on how quickly you saw me getting into patches and things like that and setting sounds. It's very quick on the 2600. It's faster on the Odyssey. And you know, if you're trying to change sound settings in the middle of a song, it's much faster. If you're a kind of person who gets stressed out during shows because you want to get there very quickly and have it ready to go, Odyssey is probably the way to go. The 2600, I mean, probably that's why drum solos were borrowed by rock bands, was because keyboard players like, hey, can you give me like 30 seconds to get my sound patch up? No, I can't. That's a long time on stage. So but that's a big sound. Now there is, because of the aftertouch that's built into the Odyssey, mine seems to have a glitch that if you hit it, hear that volume jump? I don't know how to deactivate that. It's the most irritating thing I got. So the fastest thing to do is to learn how to The fastest way to do it is just to learn how to play very, very, very gently. My fingers are right on the keys. Because if you leave your hand, if you do it like you do with a classical piano, you're going to hear that all the time. And I know because I've studied, you know, I spent a while studying a little bit of classical piano. And you learn very quickly to hit the keys really hard on a piano. You don't want to do that on the Odyssey. If anyone else has an Odyssey and yours does not do this, let me know. This could just be a fault in mine. So I don't know if that's something you want to keep in mind. Anyway, there you go, brief introduction. I keep this on the, as I mentioned, on the chorus settings. All you got to do to change your settings is just click that. There's my flanger sound. You go like this, and when you find your setting you want to use, I'm trying to find it because I have my hand in the way. Echo, delay, reverse, gate, spring, plate reverbs. Trying to find my talk box. Hello. All you got to do to change your sound settings is turn the knob, hit the button. So there's my pitch setting. So if you have this thing set up for stereo on stage, this one will actually pan from one speaker to another. Phaser setting. Again, those are my settings. That's my recommendations I would give. If you buy the 2600, you have the 2600. You just have to understand you may have to get very good at switching settings very quickly. And as you saw, that really didn't take a whole lot of work. The Odyssey, it's 2 switches. So you have square wave, square wave, square wave, saw wave, saw wave, square wave, or saw wave, saw wave. Those are your 4 different choices. And I don't think it makes a difference between whether it's saw square or square saw. So, and you'll learn to use this to kind of control your sounds. But it's the same thing on the 2600 as on here. So now you got the hard part. choosing which one you think is best for you. Again, if you get stressed out on Sage, I'd probably go with the Odyssey. If you find you'll want to end up patching like a madman on the 2600 and get lost on it, you'll probably want the Odyssey. If on the other hand you like having the 3 oscillators and you want to play with that, you'll want the 2600. My choice was to get both. Alright, so now you got the hard part, you got to decide. Alright, comment, like, subscribe, and we will see you next time.